But some news this week out of Colombia that was interesting. The Minister of Sport has said that late August or early September is probably the most realistic time for soccer to return in that country. Let's move that up here and assume that MLS won't be back on the field until at the earliest August, September. That creates a unique opportunity to switch Major League Soccer schedule. Now, there's a couple ways that you could do this. I think the one thing I always hear is MLS should go to a European schedule. So, Ale, what do you think? MLS in September to a European schedule.
It makes all the sense in the world. It really does. And for those that will say, well, what about the winter months? What about playing those games in cold weather and snow and the possibility of having to reschedule games, so on and so forth? And say, well, you can take a winter break. And if that's something that you want to work into your season and you want to work into your plans, and it's something that you can address. I think there's a part of MLS that is unwilling to go into that sort of scheduling because of the competition they get from other sports in this country. Well, let me tell you something. Whether you play on a European schedule or in the current MLS schedule, NFL football is going to be NFL football until the day we die and beyond, okay? And so that is not your competition, right? And that is not drawing fans away from you, because the hardcore MLS fan is going to go to the games regardless of whether there's an NFL football game going on. And the hardcore football fan is not coming to an MLS game anytime soon, right? The crossover is very minimal when it comes to hardcore on both sides. So if that's one concern, I would put that to the side. The counter argument would be, okay, wait a second. If we're in September, can we, if you do the math and let's assume that logistically you can say, all right, you know what? Let's play 2 games a week for September, October, November. That gives you 24 games. You've already played 2. That's 26 games. Maybe you work in 4 other games in those 3 months. Now you're up to 30 games. You can make the argument that that's a legitimate regular season, and you can structure then the playoffs to beginning of December and go all the way to a couple of weeks into December to decide your champion. And that, although it's truncated and although it doesn't feel like the timing is quite correct, it's still perhaps a more legitimate season than some of the other plans that have been put out there, the sort of tournament type thing that sounds kind of gimmicky and I think cheapens the product. So if you're able, ideally, best case scenario, work out the scheduling to where you can play 26, 30 games prior to going into a playoffs, and I say, yeah, go ahead and do that. But you also have a unique opportunity, you just mentioned it, where you can sort of now match yourself with the rest of the world. The perception of a lot of people outside of the United States when they think of MLS, and they think of MLS being in their own schedule and their own thing, having their own sort of way of doing business and their own way of having their structure in the league, it's almost as if, we don't take it seriously. Going to a European schedule, it lines up a lot of things that would, in some ways, give MLS validity and validation around the world. It's like, okay, now we have a transfer window. Now we're part of all the things that the rest of the world are, or for the most part, the rest of the world are a part of. I think that's something that MLS should consider. I think the idea of having the European schedule and aligning yourself with FIFA dates and all the things that would allow you to be part of a major player in a bigger picture, I think all those things are worth considering. But I don't know that MLS has made that a priority just yet.
Herc, what do you think? Would moving to a European calendar, as Alec kind of suggests, give MLS a little bit more international credibility?
Without a doubt, it would make it a major player because they're finally aligned with the rest of the world. They finally have the same transfer windows. You can say whatever you want about the winter months and it not being viable for Major League Soccer. That's not the case because we see this all the time with Major League Soccer. We see this with international soccer here within the United States. The Snow Classico, playing in Denver, playing in Toronto, playing in New York, Kansas City, whatever you may think, it happens. It's doable, and I'll tell you why it's doable. When you look at Major League Soccer and the TV revenue, I believe it's in the mid-90s millions. That's nothing compared to the TV revenue that NBA has, about 2.6, and NFL has about 6 billion. So 2.6 billion, 6 billion. You're not going to compete with those. The money is going to be drawn at the gates. It's going to be done with who comes and watches you. And these markets like Seattle, these markets like Atlanta, these markets like Portland, they have proven to weather the storm, for lack of a better phrase, when it comes to these weather reports or these climate changes. You need to go off that. It won't happen because Major League Soccer is hell-bent on finishing out this season. And as gimmicky as it can be, and I agree with Alejandro, they're looking at maybe that prorated schedule and maybe these neutral sites, a la the NBA, looking at Disney World in Orlando, that kind of thing. That's maybe the route they will go. And I do enjoy the 2 games a week, as Ali has said, going into the December, January months with a possible finish of MLS Cup. And I think that's the route they will take. If I was Major League Soccer, I would use this as an excuse to align myself with the rest of the world because it just makes sense.
Ale, whenever I talk to people about MLS, this is totally anecdotal. One of the complaints I hear a lot about is schedule. Is it overstated, or is schedule actually like a really big problem for this league, something it needs to sort out, whether it's because of what's happening now or not?
Specific to what, Seb?
Well, I think a lot of people don't like that the league runs not on a European calendar. It's a long season. And then I think beyond that, as you mentioned, there are a lot of times in which MLS is competing with either other international soccer or other American sports, especially at the critical time of the MLS calendar ending in what is the NFL regular season. So I think when I talk to people, there's a lot of complaints about when MLS gets important and everything else that's happening on the calendar.
Yeah, and those are all fair positions to take, and I think that has been a complaint for years now. I think MLS has improved in terms of understanding the value of the regular season and the value of the playoffs, and they have made some changes into the playoff structure. So what we saw this year in terms of it's no longer 2-legged, it's one leg. You have to go and play an away game, or you have to play a home game, or whatever the case may be, given whatever you did in the regular season. The fact that they shortened the playoff to the point to where you were finishing before the FIFA breaks and before you had generated momentum within the playoffs, and then all of a sudden there's a FIFA break or there's Thanksgiving, and then you have MLS Cup. I think MLS addressed some of those issues, and I give them credit for that because I thought it was a change that needed to happen. But now we live in a different world. And so here's an opportunity, a unique opportunity to truly look at the model and the option of what is it that keeps us from adding ourselves and aligning ourselves with the rest of the world? And are those reasons valid enough now that we have it in front of us as a real possibility? Are those reasons valid enough for stopping us from doing it? And so it really, I think it becomes a situation where MLS has to truly sit down and say, okay, honestly, flat out, pros and cons, where are we at? And what do we think is best about aligning ourselves with the rest of the world? And what do we think that we like about being unique and being different? And maybe MLS, in an effort of being unique and being different in the past and being themselves and having their own personality and having that independence of we're going to grow as a league, you made it almost a matter of pride and saying, well, this is the way we do it. And this is what makes us different. This is what makes us unique. And we're going to appreciate that, and we're going to grow that, and we're going to expand that within our own rules and regulations and within the structure of our own league. But I do think that now MLS has grown to the point to where you don't have to have this chip on your shoulder where you're unique and you're different and you have this different vibe and this different energy about your league. You've grown now to where you can now position yourself and try to, at the very least, go and sit at the big boy table and say, hey, we want to be a major player too. We're here, we can play too, and we have the stadiums, and we have the logistics, and we have the infrastructure, and we have the salaries, and we have a whole lot of other things that other leagues that are sitting on the table don't have. So we want to be a major player too. But if you're going to do that, then you're going to have to, in some ways, find flexibility within the structure of your own league. And I think MLS is to the point now to where they can take the step if they so desire.
I think the most important thing here, as well as the trends that we've been seeing of late with Major League Soccer the last 2 years, 3 years, is this buying of young players and exporting these players, the selling of players. If they want to be a major player in what is the world's market, you need to align yourself and give yourself an opportunity to be that player.
Sure. I mean, right now, a guy like Miguel Almiron gets sold in the winter transfer window, which is really when teams in Europe aren't maybe looking for players. You'd like to sell your biggest assets during the summer. So on that note, if it were to happen, you think we'd see a lot more MLS players going to Europe, Herc?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head right there. That's when it happens. That's when you sell these players. That's when these teams are looking for said players. So why not increase your market? Why not increase your reach? Why limit yourself if what you really want to do is export these players, have Major League Soccer be that trampoline for the next platform?
And it's not just the players going to Europe, it's players coming into Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
Herculez just mentioned the young players. They would see the trend and they say, hold on a second, we just saw Miguel Almiron and he got sold to Newcastle. And then if that were to happen with more and more players, then you think, you know what? This is a league that I can use. This is indeed, and with this MLS throwing this for years now, we want to be a legal choice. Okay, well, they would be a legal choice in players saying, this is a way in which I can get to my ultimate goal. And maybe those same players that come here as younger players, they grow and mature in Major League Soccer, and then they say, wait a minute, this is pretty good here. I don't necessarily have to go over there. This is a product that I enjoy, and I'm getting paid well, and I'm happy. My family's happy, and we have a great standard of living. Maybe I just stay here. So whether you go to Europe as a young player or whether you stay in MLS, both of those things are positive for MLS. If you go, then you show a pathway to other players and saying this can be a legal choice, and this league can get you to where you want to go. Or this can be a legal choice, and you can be here and really grow your career and add value to this league. Either way, MLS wins.
Should MLS go to a European calendar? One of the many questions, many debates around Major League Soccer.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.